Good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome. These are discussions happening in the Women's Day week. So naturally, it must have already been guessed from our discussions that we are trying to see how to make sense of the global UN theme this year, which is Digital with BW. I am Noor Varsia. I'm the Group Editorial Director of Businessworld. And with me, I've got my colleague, Resham Suhail. Resham is our editor for the Startup Beat, and she speaks to many powerful women entrepreneurs, considering that's the flavor that has been of the last couple of years, in addition to what we have seen among the women leaders in India. But today she's our host as a double hat. And Resham, why don't I let you kick this off with a little bit on what we'll be doing today?
Thank you, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you. It is my pleasure to be your host for today. We are here to celebrate International Women's Day, and for today, the theme is Digital, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. This theme is aligned with what most of our women thought leaders across the industries are doing: innovation and technological change and education in the digital age for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. Going forward, we will be inviting women thought leaders and many more women who are leading their beats across the industries to have deeper discussions on how technology has played a very significant role in terms of bringing more women into leadership roles and to lead the front. For today, these discussions we are doing under the banner of BW Businessworld's Most Influential Women Initiative. And I am also looking forward to learn many new things today from women leaders. We will be having women leaders from across the sectors, from healthcare sector, from HR sector, from well-being, and much more. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Resham. Thank you so much. Good job. To everybody, of course, I'm not going to eat into the first panel's time because I saw some of the speakers. I was hearing their discussions, and I have to say that I'm looking forward to it more than everybody else. The only thing I want to put out there is what did we mean by digital with BW? What did we mean by technology for equality? Now, technology should have had been equal. There was the starting point more or less was the same, but like all else, where the starting points are the same, but things become different later. The reason why this theme makes sense for this year, and from our perspective at Businessworld, is because technology can play the role in economic empowerment of women. We often internally argue, is it even right to use the word women empowerment anymore? Considering we are empowered, all sections know as much as possible the different kind of laws the government has kicked in, industry has kicked in, and various bodies have kicked in to empower women or inform them about their empowerment rights. However, it doesn't translate on ground. And the proof of this can be seen in the fact that India ranks 135 on 146. I'm sure everybody's going to quote this number at some point between the next couple of days, between today and tomorrow. But 135 of 146 in the Women Economic Forum of Gender Gap, which is not cool, unfortunately. Which means that our empowerment ideas or the ways we are doing it is lacking in some way, and hence the trajectory. Unfortunately, if you look at the trajectory of the last 4 years, India actually declines. Now, there are various ways to explain this, but there is really no sensible conversation where these numbers make sense. Therefore, technology for equality must kick in. There are two parts to this. One, how can we use technology as an enabler, which is pretty much how we saw the rise of the entrepreneurs, wherein technology and mobile phones allowed a lot of people to start their businesses. Where do we see, or how much can we push that forth so that there's accessibility for women to be able to utilize that and grow? Numbers are bad in this. I'm unfortunately quoting 2020 numbers, but the scenes are not very different. Now, according to the GSMA report, women are 8% less likely than men to own a mobile phone in India at the moment, and 20% less likely to be on the internet. There was an economist report that was also done same year, wherein it was discussed that almost 85% of the women who are online witness or experience harassment or violence of some forms. Now, two very different metrics, but it shows that embracing equality where technology is not going to be that easy. Tech for equality, it is not going to be that easy, even if we bring together the intersection of grassroots voices and leaders come together to generate commitment, it's still not be easy. With that, I want to go away. I want to open the floor for my very senior colleague, Jyotsna, and her panel, which has even more senior leaders, but all amazing women. And most importantly, amazing leaders. Women are not. That's what, differentiates them and what they're doing. Ideas to remain consistent, collective, and diverse as we grow. With that, I'm going to wish everybody the best of luck. And back to you, Resham.
Thank you so much, ma'am. To add to what you said, what numbers you quoted, the silver lining is there. And a recent survey showed that there is a 35% surge in the job openings for women in white collar job sector, just because the leaders are now recognizing the women's capability across the sectors. Without further ado, we would like to invite our first panel, which will be talking about the economic cost of gender inequity. I would like to invite senior leaders in the panel. Ms. Debanjali Sengupta, Country Head, Shell Lubricants India. We have Deepali Naair, who is Director, Digital Sales India, IBM. We have Jaya Vaidhyanathan, CEO of BCT Digital. We have Lavanya Nalli, who is Vice Chairman, Nalli Silk Sarees. We have Dr. Punita Kumar-Sinha, Independent Director, former Senior MD, Blackstone. And to moderate the conversation with these senior ladies, we have our own Ms. Jyotsna Sharma, who is Senior Editor with BW Businessworld.
Thank you. Thank you, Resham.
Over to you.
Thank you, Noor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, you've heard from my colleagues, Noor and Resham, about our focus on digital. You have heard a lot of numbers, and like Noor rightly said, 135, actually, it is a number that makes you sit up and take notice. In fact, I'll add to that, Bangladesh and Nepal outperform India in terms of gender equality. So without getting into more numbers, let's begin the discussion. So let me start with you, ma'am, Ms. Vaidhyanathan. I'll ask you the first question. India needs a strong focus on gender equality. What is your view on this?
It absolutely does, because you talked about the economic cost of gender equality. And, gender equality has cost the world 70 billion since 1990. We're talking about more numbers. More fundamental than numbers, what numbers portray, is the fact that we're underutilizing 50% of our population overall. And that means a lot. It means a lot of economic capital is going to waste. It means a lot of talent is going to waste. And it needs to start all the way from grassroots levels, all the way to corporates and the board. We can separate it by rural India, which is slightly more conducive in terms of the women actually coming into workplace because they have to. Yeah. Is the corporate India, where it is more a choice, which is exercised by not the general population. It's not exercised by women. So where is the question of empowerment, right? And you take it all the way to the board, and you see that while in India, it's been a healthy percentage increase, and stands at 18% as per the EY survey, but still 18% is still underrepresented. I've had the opportunity to work on global international boards, and I see that the percentage is, I was working for a French board, and we had no men on the board. It is the other extreme of gender equality in that sense. So we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. So I'll come to you, Ms. Nalli. We have made strides, and the conversation about gender equality, it is mainstream right now. Corporates are taking it seriously, and of course other sectors too. What are your views on how we can push gender equality?
Thank you for that. So my view on this, I think, and I've said it many times, there needs to be a systemic approach to number one, understanding the problem, and then number two, addressing the root of the problem. And the way that I look at it is it really requires a multi-pronged approach at a societal level. So policymakers do have their, they have something to add to this. Those who are in corporates, those who are both at leadership positions, who are on board positions in whatever aspect within the corporate ecosystem. And also I would go a little bit further and say, when we talk about society, right, that these norms need to change across society, I would even bring it all the way down to the family unit, right? And I think that all women, there, men and women, also bear a certain responsibility for ensuring that if we say as a nation that the progress of women, the advancement of women across social parameters, across economic parameters matter, then we can't outsource the problem merely to policymakers and to corporates. Now, policymakers have done their bit and they can continue to do their bit. And we've heard some of the statistics that was indicated earlier. But just to give you an example, 18% of women are now, the representation of women on boards now seems to be 18%. I think 10 years ago, it was closer to 5 or 6%. So we have made some inroads there, right? Over and above, I think at the corporate level, other than policies at the corporate level, things like flexible working hours and so on and so forth, role modeling, mentorship programs, women for women, right? Not just having access to mentors, but having access to sponsors, understanding at a very deep level for all of the women in the workforce, why is it that some women continue to progress at work while others don't? What is it that's different about these women than that allows them to progress versus the others who fall out of the workplace? And I would say this is a place where we really need to have a very deep understanding, which goes beyond shallow understanding, beyond judgment. So say, oh, okay, some women are just not. It's not that. Most likely what you're going to find out when you peel back the layers is that the women who are able to progress have a support system that is a reliable support system, right? Unfortunately, your prime working years just come into clash with your prime biological years, right? For one half of the workforce. And so because women are the only ones who can have kids as of now, they're going to be pulled out of the workforce if they don't have a reliable support system, which can take over those aspects of their responsibility so that the woman can go back into the workplace.
I'm going to bring in Ms. Sinha here. In fact, Ms. Sinha, thank you for joining us. She's joining us from the US. It's very early in the morning there right now. Ms. Sinha, can we have your views on this?
So I think obviously it's very, very important for policymakers to play a role and intervene in at critical junctions to promote more women. So I think the policymakers actually did a great job on boards. So by instituting that there should be at least one woman director on every board initially in 2013, that led to a flurry of activity where companies were forced to bring in women on their boards. And I now see that on many of the boards that I'm on, that there's actually not just one woman director, in some cases 2 or 3. So, and this is not happening because there's any policy dictating it, because the policy was only for one woman. But now companies are finding that women are adding a lot of value. So they're bringing many more women on their board voluntarily. So I think sometimes policymakers need to just do a little bit nudging, and that nudging itself then leads to a trend. I think the other trend that I think will really be quite helpful for the Indian corporate sector is the business responsibility reporting that is being mandated by SEBI. So that requires that every company has to do a number of disclosures in their annual reports, and including gender parity, in terms of what is their gender mix, what are the salaries, and that I think by making those important disclosures, companies will realize and see other companies' disclosures and say, look at their own disclosures and realize perhaps they're not meeting the peer benchmarks. And I think that will again stimulate a lot of activity and bring a lot of women at all levels. So I think the hiring for women is going to definitely increase. And then I think the other thing policymakers have done that has really helped is that we also have to develop the pool of talent and the pipeline, which we don't also have currently because women were underrepresented in the educational sectors earlier. But now you talked about the 135 out of the 147, but in education, it's 107, India's rank. So it's still not great, but it's better than at all levels. And so institutions are now having some quotas for women. And those women actually don't even need the quotas anymore because women are doing far better academically across all exams. And so at least in the IITs where I went, we were 1% to 2% women during my time. Now we are about 15 to 20% women. So that initial push that the government did a few years ago has led to now a lot more women just taking the exam because they felt they had a chance. And then now naturally women are getting in. So I think all of these things policymakers have done a good job with, and I think we'll see more of that coming.
Ms. Sengupta, so we've spoken about support, we've spoken about policy. Tell me, what can corporates do to push gender equality?
And thanks for the question. The corporates actually can do so much more because I somehow feel that the corporates have the power within themselves. They really don't have to depend on anybody outside. There is a few tick box on the policies that if corporates want, that is, I would say, a good starting point, but that's not progress, at least the way I look at it. So progress is going to come when corporates will take a step ahead than what the policy is asking them to do. So at least in Shell, the way I look at it, Shell is very clear that what is actually the reason that women, as Lavanya was saying, that drop off at a certain point of time. When you look at the pipeline, you will exactly know there is this pattern and you can catch that pattern, that is where they're going to drop off. Either they're moving with their husbands or they're having a family and taking a step back without a proper care and supported back at home. They're not being able to come back. I think, and societal pressure of them being the primary caregiver for people at home. So very clearly in Shell, where we went ahead and said, first, we need to have women mentors and men as well to just stand with these ladies who've gone through the same journey. So I went through the same journey of being a mom. I went through the same journey of having a spouse of who had a very, very demanding profession of being in investment banking. And it was very clear that my experiences are real experiences that I can share in my mentorship circle with our teams, right? With other ladies who are going through this. The other bit is very clearly in our corporate policy, the parental leave. 6 months of maternity, but now there is a paternity leave and 2 months of paternity leave where you are asking that your Mr. Husband, you have to be a caregiver as well, right? And you are asking them to do that. The other bit is the flexibility. If you are allowing them long before hybrid working, Shell had always this very clear, flexible work from home policy. And this was an arrangement that you can have a good discussion, you can have with your manager and agree about a certain flexible work timing, which allowed many of the mothers to continue, young mothers to continue. And this has been some of the examples that at least I have personally also benefited from. And it's very clearly coming out that this creating a nurturing environment for the women and telling them that you really matter. And whatever is in your life phases, we are right there with you. And there is a maternity toolkit so that people are talking to them. There is even, we initially, before COVID, there was a proper creche that we opened in our offices so that they could bring their children along. And these are things that we have. And the other bit which we really do is that starting the whole journey of education, support of women in professions, which is not the usual one that they go to. So which is in commercial roles, in technology roles, and engineering background. These are the areas we really support women to come in so that you are not losing out people in many of the areas to be their productive self.
So you spoke about mentorship. You know, I was speaking to a group of women and I've read about this as well. It's interesting that they say that when they take maternity leave and when they come back to an organization, strangely, they are unable to start at that position where they left off. So I think maybe mentorship at that time, like you're saying, it really helps because not only is it career progress, but also you pick up where you left off and your mentor can guide you in that. I will bring in Ms. Naair here to get her views. Ma'am, tell us a little bit about what kind of policies that corporates can focus on specifically that, we can then push gender equality with.
So Jyotsna, while I was listening to Lavanya and, Debanjali just now, the problem to my mind is looking after the pipeline. Okay. So we also, let me add to the statistics over here. We've actually got lesser VPs and CEO -1, -2 women. So we're going to face that problem for the next 5 years again. So if we're saying less than 5% women in Fortune 500 companies globally and in India, you're going to see even lesser, not more, because, you don't have the pipeline, right? Same is the case, and I will come to the corporate policy bit that you're talking about, right? And I think Debanjali very well put. This is about pipeline. If the women are just going off ramps, how do you ensure that you kind of, let them stay in? But it all starts at the bottom. So on one side, you have, the sugarcane workers' hysterectomy issues that we've heard of, right? They're forced to have hysterectomy so that, they can come to work. We ourselves work with, in IBM, we work with STEM for Girls. And there, the tier 4 towns and in rural areas, women are actually discouraged by their families to take up STEM as education because, it's difficult for families to support and so on and so forth later on, right? So, one is the corporate organizations need to have active, CSR policies along with the government to ensure that that pipeline is improving from a mindset perspective in the country. Okay, this is a societal context, and that is where corporates can play a role. And the CSR funds can be utilized, for that. The second, I think is very well documented now, whether it's a maternity policy, flexible, work hours and so on and so forth, is something that the corporates have been doing for a while. The programs are working, and I think it may have improved the base pipeline, which is, college into corporates, college into, 0 to 5 years working and 0 to 7 years working. You actually find the diversity ratios which have gotten better over the years. When I joined the workforce 30 years ago, nobody had even heard of D&I initiatives. So things have improved at that level. When you're recruiting from colleges, recruiting from campuses, participation inside colleges, like Punita mentioned, so all those have improved. But what is not improved is actually this IWD's, theme, which is embracing equity. How to ensure that you have more women CEOs, for example. If you were to just look at that, the how-to needs to be made better. We have made equal policies because we want to achieve equality, but maybe it's time for you to have unequal policies for women to get the acceleration. I said, think about that, right? 2-3 areas that we must look at. One is, the gender pay gap. Can the boards ensure that they report, that there is no gender pay gap? Let's look at policies such as those. Can the boards report when they're doing senior management recruitments that they did have, the search was given a fair chance, that, they tried their best to recruit women candidates and they didn't find enough, can the boards be held responsible and, ask that question? I think these are some of the things that need to be done, which is what I'm referring to as, the equity, embracing equity, unequal, reporting and policies to say, okay, what do we do to achieve equality? Because otherwise it's still going to take us 70 to 100 years. And this is statistic which is reported. 70 to 100 years it will take for, for us to be actually equal participants, in the workforce. So I think not some tough questions need to be asked because, Punita, I agree the independent director policy has worked, but I think it's about pushing the envelope a little further and saying, let's ask the boards to report, just like today we report on CSR and, a lot of the independent director bit, for example. Let's also ask that question on senior leadership, gender ratio, what is being done and what has been done. I think that's where I would talk about policy making.
Wonderful. So we should have some unequal policies then. I like that.
If you want to achieve equality. See, that's a theme today, embracing equity. It's about the how to.
Yeah, I love it.
Jyotsna, if I could just add to Deepali, what you said, which is that the business responsibility reporting that SEBI's mandated actually does require this kind of disclosure. It requires gender metrics in companies and also pay gaps.
Yeah.
So I know Ms. Sengupta has a hard stop, so I'm going to come to her and I'm going to ask you, tell tell us about a particular challenge that you faced as a working woman, how you overcame it, and has it shaped you to be the leader that you are today?
Yeah, good question. And it makes me self-reflect a bit, but it just feels like I've started long back. So like when Deepali was mentioning that when she joined in, there was hardly any women. Yes, say 18 years ago when I came into the energy industry, there was hardly anybody to look up to, right? So I was writing my own playbook and how do I get in and navigate my way in. But I think it helped to just raise my hand for most of the things because believing myself that I was equal was the first step that I took. I was raising my hand for every opportunity. What happened is that not necessarily was everybody used to seeing women with hands raised up. So that was something that I would rather say that it was a learning opportunity for others who saw me with hands raised up rather than me putting my hand down. I think that was the only thing that when I look back was what I did right. I didn't put my hand down for whatever it took, even if I saw uncomfortable glares. But I think end of the day, I will say if I was extremely conscious at the same time that, okay, if somebody is betting on me, investing in me and giving me an opportunity, which was the first time, of course, there is a bit of an element of uncertainty. I will do such a good job that then, the person who was doubting at least has climbed over the learning curve. So when that was happening, I would say over and over time, you build a personal brand and then you might be delayed, but you will never be denied. But I think the purpose that I took over time was that if I give up, I have actually closed an opportunity for many who are watching me and coming behind me. And that was the key driver. And I then gradually I saw many supporting men on the way. And when I look back, I thank them as well, because it wasn't possible that you would say, I was chopping off the barriers all by myself. No, that was a wrong thing. I gradually built my village and I gradually had support.
Wonderful. And before I let you go, a woman leader that you look up to.
And you guys.
When I was just thinking about a woman leader that I look up to, I would really say, first thing that there would be many, but the first one that came to my mind was Kiran Bedi, because she was really trying her level best to forge into a place which was the most unexpected of women. And I think that's what I most learned from, because in energy industry, I was honestly one of the first comers in most of the things in India. And then I was just thinking, oh, she has a tougher job and she still managed and still didn't give up. Then there is examples. If not anything else, I can learn from the way that she fought the challenges. And I think most of the challenges were up there in the mind.
Yeah. Most of the challenges are usually up there in the mind. You're right.
I just have to say I was right. Last week in a industry forum, and it was an industry meeting of all energy leaders. I was sitting on a panel, and from India, out of 6 men, I was 1 woman, right? And then we said, yes, we have to do something about diversity, and that was a topic because it was so glaring that I was 1 woman in energy. But there was another lady who was from the US, and she was an engineer, but from the CEO's panel, I was the only one. And then we often said, but we were somehow trying to justify by saying, yes, by the way, energy is a male-dominated industry. And the justification at one point of time, I had to raise my hand up like old days and said, sorry, I have a problem. It isn't a male-dominated industry. Yes, when you walk into the room, you see a lot of people wearing pants, which is absolutely fine. But if you can bring the value on the table, I think that's the only thing that dominates, because the brain has no gender. Yeah. And you have to really understand that. And they said, yes, next time should be 50% women. I said, okay, that's a tall claim to make, but let's start at least. Let's hope for that.
So brain has no gender. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Sengupta.
Thank you so much and have a wonderful panel. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right. So I'll come to you, Ms. Sinha. Let's talk a little bit about women mentoring women, your views on it. And also, like I asked Ms. Sengupta, if you'd like to share a challenge that has shaped you to be the leader that you are today.
Okay, great. So first of all, on women mentoring, I think I've actually had very good experience on male mentoring. I think women mentoring will happen more and more as more women come into senior leadership position. But until then, we need male mentors, and we need men to support and believe in the women. And I've been very fortunate in my career that, of course, during my time in the 80s and 90s when I was working, there were no women.
Yeah.
Hardly any women at senior roles. So I needed some, every time I got a break, it was because there was an emancipated man on the other side who believed in me and gave me the opportunity and then supported me.
Yeah.
But I think going forward, given that there are many more women in senior leadership positions, it's very important for women to mentor other women. And I think even if you don't mentor, by just being present in a role or being there and doing the things that you're doing, also inspires younger women. And they just look up to you, they follow you, and they reach out to you, and they, read your stories, and the panels like this one, they all are inspirational to women. So yes, I do believe that women mentorship is important, and many organizations are setting up women initiatives where they're just creating networking opportunities just for women in firms, and that gives a platform for women to interact with other women and look out for other women.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important. Now, you talked about a challenge that I faced. So I go back to, I faced, of course, all of us face many challenges. But this was a challenge that was very early on in my career, and I could easily have given up. So when I was doing my PhD in finance at University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School, I was the only woman in my class, and that too a brown woman. They never really had, brown women in the PhD program, let alone, women. And then to complicate matters, I also became a mother during my coursework, and that was something they just couldn't handle. Is like, how first we have a woman, and now this woman is, and they literally use the words, now she's gone and got pregnant. Now she's gone and delivered a child. Like, what do we do with her? Should we support her because she's going to quit and she's not going to finish? And so I was determined to finish. And I fought my way through in terms of like winning their support. And I came up with a PhD thesis topic that was so original that I ended up finishing my PhD before any of the other students in my class. So that made them realize that, women can do it no matter in whatever capacity. And then I think that has increased. I believe that, led the path for more women coming into some of these PhD programs. And that was important for me to finish my PhD and to do that, because then that gave me the opportunity to take on jobs that were, otherwise not open for women. And so that's what was very important in my journey as a very starting point, was to really persuade the men that women and mothers can do it.
So I know that we've gone over time, but I do need to ask, and I do need to ask you all for your closing remarks. But before I do that, I want to go to Ms. Nalli, because, after what you said, Ms. Sinha, I know that Ms. Nalli has had a similar experience. Ms. Nalli, can we hear about that? So I remember reading about it.
Okay, I think my experience has been a little bit more, relatively more recent, but I think very similar. I started out my career at Nalli, but then I went to Harvard Business and graduated 2011. And then I started my career, so to speak, right? That phase of my career with McKinsey, moved back, was with Myntra, and then came back to the family business. So I've had an exposure to the corporate world in the US, the corporate world in India, that startup economy. And then I brought all of that back when I re-entered the family business. And that's gone towards shaping my approach, my leadership, my belief, my values, all of that. Right? And some of it, I completely echo what's been said by my peers before. When I'll go back to McKinsey. When I was there at McKinsey, 2011, 2010, 2011, and 12, there were not that many women partners and even fewer women directors. And the way that mentorship works, and this is the way that I take it, it's not just enough that you have a female leader, you need to also resonate with them. The mentoring someone it's not as straightforward as you just pull two names out of a hat. Because leaders come in so many different styles. So it's also critical that you resonate with that person, right? What is their style? Are they more, like, I know what my style is. I'm passionate, fierce, intense, extroverted, right? Like warm. I'm analytical, but I'm also very sort of direct and vocal, and bring all of me into the workforce. There are other women leaders who are extremely successful, who have a much more tact, diplomacy, a calm-headed demeanor, very analytical. They sort of collect their thoughts. They speak very concisely, but when they do, they get their points across. While they are very strong leaders, I don't know that I might benefit the most from a mentor like that, right? And also on the other side, I don't know that they might want a mentee like me. So I think some of this also goes down to, you can have structural policies, you can have these structured programs, but you just need numbers. You just need more women in positions of authority, in positions of influence, so that those of us who are, or those who are now entering the workforce, against the stories that you're hearing from your family unit, from your spouse, from the ecosystem that you rely on, you also see something that's a little bit different. For every story that says, oh my gosh, how on earth am I going to do this? I'm stretched on every direction. I've got to fall out of the workforce. You see someone who's made it. You see someone who looks like you, or whom you aspire to be like, and whom you can resonate with. And you see that, okay, they've also got children. They also, they travel for work. They also are one half of a high profile couple where the husband is not an at-home husband. Maybe they don't have parents in the city. Maybe they don't have a mother-in-law who can fly down, and they're making it work. So I think it's very symbolic and very critical that there's visibility, that you're able to see different forms of leadership, different women leaders, and they're all mentors, they're all sponsors. You just need volume. You just need more people in.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Nair, I'd come to you. And a woman leader that you look up to.
I would add to what Lavanya said. I think male mentors, male sponsors, male allyship, I think is an extremely important part of the ingredient, to get us there. And I know you asked on challenges faced, Jyotsna, may not be big challenges, but, I think it just is that much more difficult. You face the challenges on a daily basis sometimes. And a working mother is very different from a working woman, so that phase in life, we must recognize, there is a lot more that gets done. A woman I admire, Oprah Winfrey. I think what matters to me, although she's at the height of her career, but I think to me, what is important is the distance that you travel in your life. Yeah. So I come from a very small town. My mom doesn't speak English. My parents paid 250 rupees for my graduation, to send me off to a hostel. My mom sold her gold bangles, she's very proud of me and, where I am today. So I think what is also important when we're doing the role modeling is to make young girls believe that, the distance that you travel in your life matters a lot. The success definition, I think, needs to change, not for the height, but, for the distance that you travel. So thanks, Jyotsna.
Ms. Vaidhyanathan, closing remarks from you and a woman leader you look up to.
Yeah, so I think I want to touch upon a little bit of embracing equity, because I think that our biggest journey started and where we're not, gender was never something that I really consciously thought about. And that was the reason I was raised. We were two girls at home and we were treated no differently from the way they would have raised a boy. I've had a very unusual career with a start in Wall Street. And, 6 months after I started as an investment banker in New York, there was an interview done on, the percentage of women in Wall Street. And they did a survey. And in the building that I was working in, which was like in Manhattan, they couldn't find any women officers other than my secretarial audience. So that was something that was a very thought-provoking piece. And I just have to kind of putting your hands up when the tough things happen, volunteering for activities people didn't want to do. When the energy and utilities head left, I said, I'll do that, though I didn't know much about it. To what I am today, which is coming through journey and becoming an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur, I think it's a very tough job, especially when you're a woman. Some kind of introductions to raising funds, to building a business grounds up, to kind of getting that and selling people the vision of you, who you are. It's much more difficult, which is represented by statistics as well. The number of women entrepreneurs that have actually made it big is a very small number. So I think there are challenges all along the way to kind of working on some of the global boards. I think all of that has been a step change when you choose the unusual path. So I think I wouldn't say it any differently. I would just say, quote Robert Frost, what the path that was tougher was more attractive and continues to be so. And we all have miles to go before we sleep. I think the burden of saying who's that one woman leader you identify with or look up to, I think it's like putting the burden of responsibility for everything onto a person. There are things I admire from women who have made it, and there are things I look up to the person that serves me tea on a day-to-day basis, because she's traveled a lot of distance, like Debanjali said, to be where she is. And that is something where tenaciousness is something that attracts me a lot. There are some who made it that inspire me to be who they are. So it's a different kind of inspiration, and I wouldn't put the burden of inspiration just on one single person.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much for this discussion. So while we spoke about support, we spoke about policy change, we spoke about mentorship, women mentoring women, and of course, believing in yourself. And like Gupta said, the brain does not have any gender. So let's all power on. Thank you so much. Thank you.